this church that was established by Joseph Smith way back in, what was it? He had his vision in 1820. His supposed vision. In the time, like the church that he set up and the church that we have today as modern Mormonism, like if the doctrine is the same and if it's all led by prophets who are guided by God, like you would expect there to be just a consistency, throughout that entire period, and there's just not.
Well, according to the prophet Joseph Smith, Jesus should have come back when he was 85.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
He didn't even get to that age, so...
Yeah. Yeah, so these prophets, seers, and revelators that are supposed to, be able to see into the future and communicate with God and stuff have just said a lot of bullshit things. There's heaps of prophecies that have just not come true at all.
Yep.
The whole thing with Joseph Smith being I'll see Jesus Christ in the flesh, before I'm 85. He didn't even live to 85. And then what else was there?
He died a martyr.
Do you guys know why he went to jail in the first place? Why he was at Carthage?
It was a lot to do with their practice of polygamy, which was illegal at the time, even though the 12th Article of Faith says that they sustain the laws. They were not. They were breaking the laws with polygamy, and he was a fucking pedophile, marrying 14-year-olds, so, take your pick.
Yeah.
Basically, well, that's the thing is, the Mormons, especially in the early days, have never really upheld the law. Even today, they still oppose the law. And that's one of the things, Brigham Young, he slaughtered groups of people. He slaughtered Native Americans. He slaughtered...
Really?
Yeah. It's crazy. Some of the stuff they've done. And then the US government sent troops in after the slaughter, and they erected a monument, and Brigham Smith came back later and tore it back down.
Wow.
Right.
That is
it's crazy
disgusting.
stuff. These supposed leaders of the church just slaughtering people along their way. And you look at it and let's look at the Great Trek across to Utah. The church paints it in the light of they were being tested of their faith, and they were being persecuted along the way. They weren't being persecuted. They were going through and causing problems all along the way. You imagine this huge stampede of people coming through these small towns, taking everything they have and setting up camp wherever they feel like, using all the amenities and facilities all in the name of God. They're doing bad things all on the way. It wasn't persecution. It was simply people trying to get rid of them because
you tried
they
to marry my 14-year-old, so...
And that's it. It's not some big martyrdom.
Yeah. Well, also, back to Joseph Smith and his whole thing with going to jail, the church kind of paints it as if, he was just being wrongfully persecuted for being a prophet, and people were just opposed to him. I don't know why you would be, though. If the church was good and doing good things for the people and seemed like this great miraculous thing, why would people hate it anyway, for one? But then also, it was totally it was not at all like that. Basically, Joseph Smith was, taking all these polygamous wives and stuff. And, he had, I think it was one of his counselors or somebody else, high up in the ranks of the church, was excommunicated. And then he basically spoke out against Joseph's practice of taking secret wives. Because he was also at the time, he was having all of these wives, but then lying about it to people and saying that he only had, the one wife, Emma Smith. And anyway, so then this guy who was excommunicated, he set up a newspaper called the Nauvoo Expositor. And in the newspaper, he would, write about, he was basically a whistleblower of the church's bullshit, and and would say in his articles all about Joseph Smith having these multiple wives and stuff. And it just so happened that Joseph Smith was mayor at the time of of that town, Nauvoo, and he ordered that the printing press where this newspaper was being printed be destroyed. So he sent off this mob to go and destroy this printing press because it was writing shit about him in the newspapers. And then after that had happened, the governor for the state, he wrote to Joseph Smith and denounced the city's proceedings as unlawful and demanding that those involved in the move against the Expositor, which was the name of the newspaper, submit to the processes of the law at Carthage. So basically, he got sent to jail for, unlawfully destroying this printing press. And that's why he was at Carthage. Like, it wasn't because he was being persecuted or because he was being wrongfully imprisoned or anything. Like, he literally destroyed this whole printing press. He, they tore everything out of the building and set it on fire. So of course he deserves to go to jail for that. And it's just to, just to protect his own image.
Well, even then, he was previously tried for treason and was busted out of jail. To me, that's not really upholding the law. You're being tried for treason, and you're getting busted out. And they're taking over these counties, like Hancock County. They took over the county. All these Mormons are suddenly migrating. They're sending missionaries out and telling lots and lots of people to migrate because that's how you colonize somewhere. Is you send lots of people there, you colonize it, and you boot out the native people of the land, and you enforce all of your rules. And this one person who was not educated, who founded this religion when he was young, and managed to convince a heap of people to tell lies, to convince other people to tell lies, to, all of a sudden you've got this massive movement of people moving across the country trying to escape so-called persecution, but really they're relying on strength in numbers.
Yeah. I Emma, when you were saying about them destroying the printing press, it reminded me of the 12 Miracles or something, where they show the mobs coming in and destroying the printing press.
Yeah.
I love that they it was the mobs. The mobs did that. It wasn't us.
And that's the thing is, they paint it.
They were sent by Joseph Smith.
They paint it in this light of innocence when it's them. It's him that's causing the problems to start with.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. I think one of my biggest issues with the prophets was basically the way they treated the victims. I remember very distinctly the part where, because I was kind of on the fence once that I am Mormon thing came out, where it was like, yes, we are Mormon, and then no, we're not. I was like, okay, what the fuck? And then I read a quote, I think it was by Heber J. Grant, basically telling the youth that he would rather them die than commit sexual sin. I remember reading that and being like, what the fuck? How can you say that to underage children? And I just, holy shit. I still don't have words to describe how disgusting that is. And the fact that these prophets, these men of God, aren't kind of held accountable for their words and their actions. They kind of get away with it because, oh no, it was inspired from God, when actually it's just their own thoughts and opinions.
And at the end of the day, they can always change it later on, and just gloss over the fact that it was a prophet receiving revelation and just be like, well, this is the current revelation. So,
that's really... if you guys read the CES letter, he sums it up perfectly. The guy who's written that letter, he said, yesterday's doctrine is today's false doctrine. Yesterday's prophets are today's heretics.
Here's a fun fact. So Joseph Smith once said that the moon is inhabited by men and women like Earth, and that they live to a ripe old age of 1,000 years old, and they're on average 6 foot tall and dressed uniformly. This is a prophet of God saying that there's people living on the moon. Fair enough if there is. That'd be quite the revelation. But, we've been there, and there ain't no people there. So.
Yep, exactly. And
Like, there was literally another problem. Men will never reach the moon.
Yeah.
It was like, who was it? Joseph Fielding Smith. He said, "We will never get a man into space. This Earth is man's sphere, and it was never intended that he should get away from it. The moon is a superior planet to the Earth, and it was never intended that man should go there. You can write it down in your books that this will never happen."
I mean, I hate to break it to you, but it happened, and it's about to happen again. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so ridiculous. I remember being a missionary and having it like drummed into our skulls that we were standing like in the position of Jesus, and everything that we said and did was representing him, and so we really needed to think about what we were saying, if it was doctrine or personal opinion. And like, I took that role really seriously. Like, before I said anything, I had a good think about what the fuck I was saying. Whereas these old men just say whatever the hell they want and just kind of expect us to just follow blindly and not question anything, which is fucking ridiculous. I think they need to adopt the missionary stance of like actually thinking before they fucking say, "Oh yes, this is a revelation from God," and come out with some bullshit.
Didn't Brigham Young prophesy that the sun was inhabited as well?
Yes.
Like, it's just unbelievable.
That's my favourite.
That's it. Like, it's just consistent throughout the ages. Like, you even see it in the Bible, even in the Book of Mormon, that, you know, one prophet will say something and then it'll contradict in another part. Like, it's the whole thing is full of holes. Let alone these men in modern ages where they have to try and think on the spot at times. You know, they're trying to cover up something and trying to make something else up, and it's just this one big consistent loophole that, you know, as long as they're a prophet of God, then we just have to believe them, and that's the answer.
Yeah.
And you should doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. My favourite piece of advice: don't doubt us, doubt yourself. Ultimate gaslighting. So, do either of you have anything more that you would like to add to that? Any other interesting points you have to bring up?
I think I'm pretty good. I think that, like, this is the main thing, is that we talk about prophets, and we could go on for days and days about the contradictions and the specific contradictions, but at the end of the day, I think the biggest problem is that the church bases its belief around having a modern-day prophet. You have the head of the church that's supposed to be receiving revelation for the whole church and for God's church. And at the end of the day, they're just consistently coming up with these random pieces of advice that aren't even coherent with the rest of church history. And things change, and then they change back, and then they change again. And you can't really keep up with it. You know, they rely on these men using psychological tricks to be able to talk to people in a way that they're in a way put into trance while they're listening. So that way they can internalize the messages and follow it. You know, from a young age, we're taught in primary, follow the prophet, he knows the way, in this catchy tune where you remember it for years to come. And this is what it is. It's all about the brainwashing, and these men just consistently keep us in that loop of brainwashing so that we don't go astray, we don't question it, we don't ask, you know, is this actually right? And for me, that's one of the big problems, is that, you know, this pyramid scheme is just about trying to retain its members and about trying to gain new ones and retain them.
My thing is that they aren't held accountable for their actions and the things that they say. It's just, they can just say whatever the fuck they want, and there's no consequences, and we just have to accept it because they're chosen by the Lord. Do you have anything else to add, Sister Duma?
No, I think you guys have summed it up perfectly. No, I agree. I think, yeah, they're just old white men who just are out of touch and can say what they want and are just supporting their own conservative views of the world and disregarding anything anybody else says, because of course everything that they think and feel is come from the Lord. Like, I doubt that these guys are